Right. Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining me here at turndogmillionaire.com. I have a guest with me today, Matt Forbeck, who is quite a productive author. I came across Matt via Kickstarter after he put forward quite an ambitious campaign. So I wanted to have a chat with Matt today and see his thoughts behind that and how he's going to go about it. So Matt, to say you're productive is a bit of an understatement. Please tell me a little bit about the books that you currently have out at the market and the amount of them and what you're basically working on.
All right, thanks, Matthew. My name is Matt Forbeck. I've been a writer for many years. I started out as a game designer, actually, working for companies like Games Workshop and TSR and Wizards of the Coast. At the moment, I've got, I think my 18th book is just coming out right now for novels, and I've written a lot of nonfiction as well. Most of my books have been what we call tie-in fiction, which are related to either movies or games or something else, television shows. But about 4 years ago, I started writing original novels, 3 or 4 years ago. And the first one of those came out through Angry Robot, which is in Nottingham. And it was called Immortals, which was a science fiction novel. And then I had 2 more novels come out through them, Vegas Nights and then Carpathia, which was about vampires on the ship that picked up the survivors of the Titanic. Came out in March of this year, I believe. And then late last year, I started out something called 12 for 12, which is a new project that I'm doing, where I'm challenging myself to write a novel a month for the entire year of 2012. And I decided that this is something I'd wanted to do for a long time. I'm a very fast writer, and I'd written a number of novels. And it also served as a game publisher. I used to own a company called Pinnacle Entertainment Group, and I was the president of the company that I co-founded with my friend Shane Hensley. And we had a lot of hit games, mostly Deadlands was the big one, which was a zombie cowboy game. But through that experience, I knew how to publish stuff. So I knew that self-publishing for me wasn't going to be too much of relearning things. I already knew a lot of what I needed to do. But the real trouble was then, how do you finance this stuff? How do you, when you get a regular novel contract, your publisher comes up and says, hey, we would like to offer you a contract, and here's a check that goes with that we call an advance. And that is the money that you get to live on while you're editing the book, writing the book, whatever else you need to do until it's done. But if you're self-publishing, you don't get that. And I've been a working writer for a number of years, so I didn't have, I depend on that money to come in to help feed my family. But then this thing called Kickstarter came along, which allows you to go out to the internet and say, hey, folks, I got this great idea for a novel. You guys already know me, or you can go out and check out my old work and say, hey, I like this stuff. And if you like this idea for this book, let's get going with it. So what I did is I took the 12 books that I wanted to do for 12 for 12, broke them up into 4 different trilogies, and I decided to run a Kickstarter for each one of those. The first one came out in November. First Kickstarter launched in November, ended in December. And that one did very well. I ended up with over $13,000 and 300 backers. The next one did fairly well as well. That was for a trilogy called Shotguns and Sorcery, and that one ended about 3 months ago. 3.5 months ago. And then the last one, which is called Dangerous Games, is another trilogy that I'm writing at set at Gen Con, which is the world's largest tabletop adventure gaming convention, where we do things like Magic the Gathering, Dungeons and Dragons, and such. And I've got a trilogy of thrillers set there called Dangerous Games. And that one was my best to date, and it raised $18,000 with just shy of 400 backers.
It's fantastic. I mean, it's quite a novel idea, and how's it been writing? Because that's quite a prolific amount of writing to be done, going for 12 novels in 12 months. How long are each one of these novels? You've broken them up into parts. Are they fairly short, or are they all standard length?
They're fairly short as far as novels go. I mean, most novels that I've written for other people in the past have been about 75, 80, 90,000 words, right? Usually the 80,000 word range. To give myself a little bit of a break on these, I made the trilogy, each of the books in the trilogy, 50,000 words, which is coincidentally the exact number of words that you would write for a National Novel Writing Month, which happens in November, where people try to write a complete novel in a month of 50,000 words, or at least get a good start on the novel they want to be writing. And I said, okay, that's something I could do. I know what my general word rate is every day, and I know what I can write over a long period of time. And I knew that writing 50,000 words a month was not beyond me. In addition to writing the novels for that, I'm also writing a comic book for the Magic the Gathering game for IDW Publishing, based on, like I said, on Magic the Gathering from Wizards of the Coast. and that comes out every month. So that takes up a small chunk of my time as well. And I also signed on to write a novel for Leverage, which is a TV show over here that airs on TNT. It just had its fifth season debut last night. And that's by a friend of mine named John Rogers, and Chris Downey is his co-writer and co-developer there. So I'm doing lots of other things in addition to doing the novels. And that does take up a chunk of my time as well. However, I know that I can write about 5,000 words a day when I'm cooking, and even more if I really need to, right? And you figure for a 50,000 word novel, you only need to have 10 5,000 word days in a month, which seems simple enough when you look at it that way. But then you forget about things like, oh, geez, I actually have to run the Kickstarter, which takes a lot of time. And I actually have to fulfill the orders. I have to edit the novels, and I have to revise them, and I have to get the cover designs done and everything else. So there's a lot of extra work that goes into it that suddenly pushes you up against the brink of what's possible. But still, I think I'm doing pretty good with it. I'm a tad behind right now because I worked on the Leverage novel for a couple months, but I'm planning to catch up very soon.
Fantastic. How's it been? Obviously, because you've seen both sides of the board. You're now into self-publishing, but you've done the traditional route as well. What's it been like for you to see both sides of that? Because, like you say, doing the Kickstarter campaign, it's fantastic. Lots of freedom, loads of innovative ideas, but you have to do the cover design, you have to do the editing, you have to do just the fact that you have to publish the Kickstarter event in itself. How's that been, adding all these new tools?
I actually like doing that part. It's it's not the it's not my favorite part. I actually enjoy writing the most, right? But on the other hand, having worked with a lot of publishers, I love a lot of my publishers, right? Having worked with a lot of publishers, I know that nobody really understands the book as well as the writer, right? The editor may have a good idea on it, may have a good handle on it, but then they have to communicate that to their marketing guys and their sales guys, and they have to try to get that through to the different bookstores and you also have to compete with everybody else they have to pay attention to. When I'm trying to market, sell, package my own books, nobody is going to care about those more than I am, and nobody's going to do a better job of it than I will, right? Now, at a certain point, I might say that it's worth it for me to be doing the writing more than it is to be doing the other stuff, and somebody else should be handling that stuff. But it doesn't bother me to do those things. Again, because I had an experience running a game company for 4 years, and having done a lot of publishing before that, it wasn't that much of a challenge for me. I didn't have to learn about layout programs and Photoshop and InDesign and how to set up a website and all that kind of stuff. I already had all that stuff in place. That does put me ahead of a lot of starting authors who are just starting out and think, gee, should I self-publish or should I go traditional, right? Because I already have a fan base. I already have people who enjoy my writing. I already have a lot of experience doing this kind of stuff. If you're just starting out, I don't recommend just jumping straight into self-publishing because, and I say the same thing when I do game design seminars. I think the first time you jump in, you're going to make mistakes, right? And the best way to make mistakes is to do it with somebody else who knows what they're doing. Get in there, find somebody else who can publish your stuff, and ask every question you possibly can without annoying them too much along the way. So you're teaching yourself and you're learning yourself, and you'll understand the business better, and you'll know better how to market yourself, and then you can make an educated decision about whether or not you would be better off self-publishing as opposed to traditional publishing. And all that said, I don't really think I need to make a choice between the two. I think I can do both, and I think everybody can do both. There's no reason you say, well, I'm only going to self-publish because screw those guys, or I'm only going to publish with traditional publishers because self-publishing is insulting and it's just for people who don't know what they're doing. I think it's possible to do both, and I think we've had a number of people out there who have done a great job of that. Chuck Wendig is a good example of that. Tobias Buckell is another example of a guy who's done a lot of traditional publishing, is now moving to self-publishing. And we've seen that over and over. Lee Goldberg is doing that very much now. Joe Conrad started out. He's very rabid, really, about only doing self-publishing. But not every author is that way. Some of us are happy to have feet in both camps.
Like you say, we're seeing more authors do that. And I think if you've got the established platform and you've traditionally published for quite a few years and you have the fan base, self-publishing can be sort of make a lot of sense in terms of it brings obviously more royalties your way, but it does add a lot more tools to your belt, as can we share? All of a sudden you're not just having to write, you're having to promote, you're having to build, you're having to do a bit of everything really. Um,
Right. When you're a writer, you only have to wear the one hat, right? You
yeah.
have the writer's hat. When you're a self-publisher, you have to be the writer, the editor, or hire an editor. You have to be the cover design guy or hire a cover design guy. You have to be your marketing guy. You have to be your sales guy. You have to be your website guy. You have to be your social media guy. And some of those you're probably already doing anyway, right? But not everybody has all those skills, and not everybody even cares to learn those skills or would enjoy doing those jobs, right? So you really got to know what you're good at and what you enjoy doing and what you would prefer spending your time on. And then you can make an educated decision that's right for you. And it's not going to be the same answer for everybody.
Kickstarter seems to have been a good thing for you. You've used it a few times. Are you going to be carry on using Kickstarter or a similar platform in the future?
Yeah, I think so. I haven't decided what I'm going to do after 12 for 12. I think that has been enough of a freight this year to not worry about it too much. And I still have another Kickstarter I'm going to run for that for the fourth trilogy, which I'm going to launch in mid-August. And then after that, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. But I do think that as long as I continue to self-publish, I think that Kickstarter or a crowdfunding platform very much like it will be a core issue or a core part of that. It just seems to make sense. It's even if I just look at it as pre-orders for what I'm already doing, it's still a great way to get attention for people, to get that first initial bulk order from folks, and to get attention for what I'm doing. And I don't think that's bad in any way.
Absolutely. I think quite a few people see it as much as actually raising the revenue to get the piece done. Sometimes people have already done it, but they see it as a way to sell some copies beforehand.
Exactly.
Now you said earlier that you don't recommend this as a way forward for maybe first-time authors. Do you see Kickstarter having a place for first-time authors? Maybe that idea of sort of pre-selling and just opening eyes up to a completely different and new audience?
Yeah, I think so. I think that the real trick with Kickstarter, and the reason I see some Kickstarters fail, is that Kickstarter is a platform that is based on trust, right? And there are two basic ways you can generate trust that's going to get people to say, yeah, I should give this person my money, right? And the first one is having credentials already. If you already have a fan base, if you've already proven yourself, then it's easy for you to stand up on the platform that is Kickstarter and say, throw money at me because I have great things to give you, right, in return for that. Now, if you don't have that experience, then you have to give people another reason to trust you, another reason to want to give you the money. And the other way to do that is to just knock their socks off with your presentation, to show them, to go way above and beyond what somebody who already has credits can do, and show them how cool it is. To go back to Kickstarter, last summer I had a couple of friends who ran 2 Kickstarters in the gaming industry. One of them was Gareth Michael Skark, who ran something called Far West, which was a mix-up of American Westerns and wuxia martial arts films as a role-playing game. And Gareth was looking for originally $5,000 and ended up with almost $50,000. And the reason that he got that is because he had already been working on Far West for a couple of years at that point. He had a huge following of people who knew him as a decent game designer, who trusted him to be able to come out with the work, and were interested in the product already. So that was his key. He had trust behind him, right? He had earned the credit, so to speak. Now, there was another guy named Jeremy Keller who came out with a similar Kickstarter for another role-playing game about the same time called Tech Noir. And Jeremy, I had never heard of before, but apparently had a lot of friends in the gaming industry, but it was this is his first time he was actually going to try to publish something. And the video that he did for his Kickstarter was so amazing. And part of his day job is designing videos like this for people. But his video was so amazing, it looked like something out of Minority Report as far as him like grabbing the screen and manipulating data on it, and just made it look fantastic. So he was able to earn your trust by showing you how much of a handle he had on it already, even if he hadn't done anything to prove himself before that, right? And so if you're just starting out, you really have to knock people's socks off or set your expectations excruciatingly low and hope that you're going to be able to build credit that way, right?
Have you noticed that you've created quite a few new readers? Have you come across new readers through Kickstarter, or is it just a way for you to engage with your existing community in a new light?
That's a good question. I think I have seen a number of new readers, but it is interesting when I'm at certain higher levels for my Kickstarters. If you donate $25 or more, you get autographed ebooks, right? So I get to autograph all the ebooks, which takes me like a day through this iOS program I use called MyWrite for the iPad, which is fantastic, actually, really easy to use. But as I go through, I'm like, oh yeah, I know this guy, and oh yeah, I know this lady, and oh yeah, I know this person. Now, I've known this person for years. This person was a fan of my games for years and years, right? So you do see the same people come back and back, which is really kind of cool. That means they like your stuff, and they're continuing to like your stuff and continuing to support you. But I've seen a lot of new names too, which is kind of cool. Where you go through, I'm like, I don't know who that is at all. I can't write you a really personal note because all you are to me right now is a name, which is kind of cool. So it's neat to see more and more new people coming in. I think part of that is that Kickstarter is really good at leveraging social media, right? So it's not just me getting out there and tweeting and Facebooking and blogging about it, but my friends doing it as well. And especially for the second Kickstarter, which looked like it wasn't going to quite make a full trilogy at the end of it, the way I'd set it up, I had a lot of help from friends of mine online. And I ended up having Neil Gaiman and Will Wheaton and John Rogers and Scott Sigler and a bunch of other people tweet about it for me in the last day or two. And that really brought in a lot of people that probably wouldn't have known me otherwise, right? So these to me are fresh readers that were interested and said, hey, this looks like it's succeeding. I want to get on board with this. And hopefully they're going to be the same people that are going to follow me through the rest of the trilogies and even beyond that. Or maybe even go back and read some of my old stuff.
Absolutely, and I see a lot of people, not necessarily just writers, but companies in general. Sometimes they see it as a way not to just get their product or their book financed, but it is a fantastic way to be introduced to, potentially thousands and in some cases millions of new eyes, because Kickstarter just has huge traffic. At the minute, it's kind of monopolising the crowdfunding sort of sites, but I'm sure more will pop up in the future. So it's a fantastic way to gather new readers too. If you could offer maybe like 3 tips to an author, whether they're established or new, and if they're thinking of going into a Kickstarter campaign, what would be the sort of 3 things that you would maybe sort of share with them?
Well, first I'd say make sure you can finish a book before you even start a Kickstarter, before you do anything, right? Most editors at publishing companies won't buy things from new authors on a pitch, right? And just if you say, I've got a great idea for a novel, here's the idea, they're not going to write you a check right then, unless you happen to be world famous already, right? If you already have a platform you're standing in. So not everybody who wants to write a novel can finish a novel. So make sure you can finish a novel first. That may be that if you're starting out, write the novel before you actually before you launch the Kickstarter, because the worst thing you do for yourself is launch a Kickstarter, have it be successful, and then never deliver that book. Right? You're just going to harm your reputation forever. And even if you're trying to publish through a traditional publisher, they're going to want to see that you can finish a novel before they're going to want to hire you to do a novel. All of my original novels that I've done, I sold on pitches, but that's because I had already sold other novels to other publishers before that, and they trusted me and knew that I could do this kind of work. So make sure you can finish the book. My dog is crying in the background because my wife just left. It's okay. So number 1, finish the work. Number 2 is once you're done with the work and you're planning to do your Kickstarter, do your research and make sure you understand what Kickstarter is capable of doing and what you're capable of bringing to it. Take a look at the reward structure that you're doing. One thing I think people really fail to do is they look at Kickstarter and they say, oh gosh, the Pebble Watch made $10 million. There's just free money out there to be had, right? Absolutely wrong. Especially if you're going to be getting into fiction. Look at the fiction bestseller lists. Look at the top projects of all time for the fiction stuff and say, okay, I'm not going to probably hit that. I'm probably not going to get in the top 10 or even the top 20. So what's a realistic expectation for me to be able to bring in for this? For instance, like my last one brought in $18,000, and that was the number 8 fiction project of all time, right? So if you're a new author and you've never done anything before, or you have very little to stand on, you're probably, even shooting for $10,000 might be a lot. Shooting for $5,000 might be a lot, depending on what you're doing. So set your expectations at a proper level for yourself. The third thing I think every author should do is get people to read your stuff, whether that's your friends or your family, whatever. Just try to get some feedback on it. Try to get a professional editor if you can. One of my benefits for myself is I was a professional editor for many years, both on games and on fiction as well. So for me, my drafts are pretty clean when I'm done with them, right? But if you're starting out, you're doing this for the first time, get somebody who knows what they're doing. Hire a copy editor, even if you like, and just have them go through and check it for you to make sure that you're not tripping over yourself, because it's very difficult to edit yourself, especially if you're not a professional. Even if you are a professional, it's very difficult to edit yourself. And I recommend that anybody who's doing it, try to find somebody else to get a second set of eyes on it.
Absolutely. I've certainly found that myself. Editing my own work has been a nightmare. So getting other people to help definitely is good. So I just want to now focus a little bit on the actual writing side of things, because you are such a prolific writer, and I'm sure there's people watching this who are thinking, how can you do 12 novels in 12 months? You say you're capable of doing 5,000 words in a day. Has it taken you a while to get up to that, or have you always just been able to write 5,000 a day?
No, I think it took me a while to get up to it. Although when I was younger, when I was just starting out, I didn't really clock myself, right? As I got older and I started figuring out what I wanted to do and trying to figure out if I could make a living at it full time, I did clock myself. I'm like, okay, if I need to get this done, how many words can I write per day on a regular basis? And if I multiply that by the number of cents per word I'm going to get for these projects, can I make enough money at this to support myself? And then later on, can I make enough at this to support my family? Back when I was just doing straight role-playing games, I could easily write 5,000 words a day, no problems at all, and in, day out for at least 20 days a month. And then when I started having children with my wife, that kind of got thrown out the window. So my wife actually had quadruplets. We have got 5 children, so we had one who's 13 and now 4 who are 10. And when the quads came along, my output dropped quite a bit. So I was only averaging about 3,000 words a day back then. Nowadays, that they're older and it's a little bit easier, we're back up to about 5,000 words a day. And I don't force myself to write every day. I mean, there are other things I do beyond just writing. I know a lot of writers will say, write every day, it's like a muscle, you need to get in the habit. And I think that's okay when you're starting out. I think it's a good way to build discipline. But, I write for 2 weeks at a time, finish a book, and then I move on to doing the marketing and the editing and the comic book and the cover design and everything else. So I go back and forth. And I think that helps keep me fresh, too, so I don't really burn out by just trying to write every day and not do anything else.
Yeah, because that's interesting, because that was going to be my next question. How religious are you with your structure? Do you get up at a certain time every day? And some people wake up and then they go straight to their office and they sit and write every day from X amount of time to X amount of time without failure. Is that how you do things, or have you got a bit more of a ad hoc relationship?
I'm a bit more ad hoc about it, but I do try, especially during the school year. My kids go off to school. My wife's a school social worker. They always say that the one thing that any creative soul needs in America is a spouse with benefits, right? So she's where we get our benefits from, because she works for a school district, which has excellent health insurance and everything else. So she goes off to school in the morning, and I get the kids off to school on their buses or drive them to school or whatever it is. And I sit down and work until they come home, because I know that's the biggest block of free time I have where I'm not going to get interrupted. And then when they come home, I try to get a little bit of work done while they're here. But I know that at any point something could happen. It could be that I have to take them someplace. It could be a fight that breaks out. There could be a snack that needs to be made. There could be a fire that needs to be put out. Who knows? But I know that is not sacrosanct time, right? And then when everybody goes to bed at night, I often will work for another hour or two after that. But again, if I don't write for a week or two, I'm okay with that. I know I'm going to get back to the writing. I know I'm working on other stuff that's just as essential to me for making a living. And that could be editing, publishing, layout, could be revising, cover design, marketing. It could be that I'm out there looking for work as well, because I also do work for hire for the comic books and such like that. I've done toy design, game design, etc. And I always say that a freelancer has 3 different jobs when you're freelancing. You have to get the work, you have to do the work, and you have to get paid for the work, right? If you screw up any one of those 3 things, you're doomed. So in addition to the writing I have to do, which is the middle part of that, I also have to line up the work. And nowadays I line up that work for myself through Kickstarter, and I get paid through Kickstarter, which is great too. So that allows me a lot of freedom as far as doing the other stuff.
Fantastic. And if you would have, again, 3 tips to offer a budding writer who's looking to try and get into a routine and get to that level, whether it's 3,000 words or 5, or I've heard some people who are capable of writing upwards of 9 or 10,000 words a day. Yep. What's your tip to sort of get them to that level?
I think you need to set goals, right? I think, there's first thing is to set goals. You want to be able to say, this is how many words I want to write per day. Start out by measuring yourself. You say, okay, how many words did I write today? I like to set goals like, I will not turn on the internet or especially Twitter and email for an hour or until I finish 1,000 words, right? Once I finish my next 1,000 words, then I can go back and check email and Twitter and Facebook and everything else, or Google Plus, and then I go back to writing for another 1,000 words, and then I can go back and do that stuff. And what that does is it allows me to stop being interrupted all the time, right? But it also allows me to make sure that I strive to be hitting my goals as opposed to saying I'll just do whatever I can. Because if you just do whatever you can, there's always something else that's easier to do. You know, there's a video game, there's a TV show, there's your girlfriend you want to talk to. There are dishes that need to be done, but you need to make sure that you make your writing a priority. So once you figured out what you can do and you figure out you can measure it, then you need to start calculating, how much do you need to do per month to be able to finish a book on time, right? Let's say it's a 100,000-word novel you want to write. Say it's a big fantasy book, and you realize you can write 2,000 words a day. Let's say you got a day job. You can only write 1,000 words a day, right? That novel will then take you 100 writing days to finish. And that's actually not that much time if you think about it. A lot of people will spend years writing a novel. But if you write 1,000 words a day, you could easily write two 1,000-word novel or 200,000-word novels in a year without even thinking about it. Now that's just your first draft, though. And the final tip for that is that you shouldn't worry about how bad it is. Let it suck. Let it be awful. Let it be the worst thing you've ever written. Don't worry about that. Don't go back and polish the work. Don't even think about what you've done in the past. Maybe reread if you need to find some clue to what you've already written. But just plow ahead until you get to the end. Leave little notes for yourself about things you want to fix or repair or go back and polish when you're done. But don't revise until you're done. Because, and it was a guy I know, Mike Stackpole, who's a longtime author, wrote a bunch of Star Wars novels in addition to a lot of great works of his own, taught me this bit. It's you could polish that first chapter 20 times until it comes to a gleaming shine. But in that same time, you might have been able to write 20 new chapters, right? And the trick is that as you go along in the book, you will find reasons to go back to those other chapters and revise them again. So if you polish each chapter 20 times as you go along, you'll end up polishing that first chapter an exponential number of times. And this is a good way to not finish your book.
Yeah, I feel like you can forever edit if you want.
Exactly.
You could keep on editing. Eventually, you have to let it fly. So if you just move on, it's good.
Yeah, I mean, the other neat thing about writing is that nobody gets to see it until you want to show it to them, right? So let it suck. Let it be awful. Let it be absolute shit, right? And then you can go back and revise it and pound it into shape however many times you want to until you're comfortable to showing it to somebody else, right? There's nothing wrong with, be comfortable in your own body, in your own writing style and everything else, and just let it be awful and realize that this is not the end. It's actually not even the end until you finally publish it with somebody, whether that's with a traditional publisher or with self-publishing. Until you put it out into the public sphere, you can change it as much as you want. Nowadays, with ebooks, you can even change it after that if you need to. But usually your guidepost, that goal line you want to cross, is getting it out to the public. And until then, it can be as ugly, nasty, messy as you want it to be. It doesn't have to be perfect until it's gone.
Fantastic. So what can we expect from you over the next sort of few months between now and sort of January 2013? You've obviously got the remaining 6 months of the 12 for 12 campaign. Can we expect any more Kickstarter campaigns or anything else coming up?
Well, the fourth trilogy I'm going to run a Kickstarter for starting mid-August and running through to mid-September. So that'll be a chance for people to jump in on that. I'll also start publishing the books. I actually started publishing the first book a month or two ago. The second book just came out. I just sent out to my backers last week. So that'll be coming out for people to buy in the public within a week or two. And that'll continue to roll on throughout the year. So people who have not been involved in the earlier Kickstarters can still have a chance to go back and get the other books. I have the Magic the Gathering comic book that's coming out at Comic-Con this last weekend. They just announced that I'm doing a third mini-series for that, which will be starting in October, called Magic the Gathering Path of Vengeance. So that starts in October, but there's also the current series going on right now called Spell Thief people can get into. And then in January of 2013, you'll be able to buy the Leverage novel, which is I just finished writing a few weeks back, and that's called The Con Job, and coincidentally, or not so coincidentally, is actually set at Comic-Con, which is where I got to know and meet John Rogers many years ago.
Fantastic. Well, some exciting things coming up. So I'm going to leave all the links that I can below. So if you're watching this on YouTube, please click through to my website and you'll be able to see Matt's Twitter and his website and all the various other things. And check out his Kickstarter campaigns. If you're looking to maybe get into Kickstarting, that's probably a good place to start. You'll be able to pick up some tips. So thank you very much for joining me, Matt.
Thank you, Matthew. Good to be here.
And thank you for watching, and we will see you soon. Cheers.
Thanks.